A few years ago, I made a series of 12 videos on the life and work and music of William Marshall, a fine fiddle composer who lived up in Murray and worked for the Duke of Gordon. Now it's the time for me to make a series of videos on the life, times and music of Niel Gow, and also of the dynasty which he founded, his musical sons and so on. Now, a couple of things to say at the beginning. I'm not an expert traditional player. I play the tunes off books. I've only begun playing them perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. And if you want to hear them played in an authentic, and you should, in an authentic traditional style, then go to Paul Anderson, go to Ian Fraser. There are a number of excellent players you can go to on YouTube, and I thoroughly recommend that you do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some tunes, and possibly some that are not very familiar, maybe even one or two that have not been recorded for YouTube, along with background detail and information about this famous and important and highly reputed man, much respected man. Well, let's get started. He was born in 1727 in Inver, or possibly in Strathbran, two places close together, the little sheltered village on the west side of what is now the very busy A9 from Dunkeld and Burnham. Strathbran is on the highland side of the parish of Little Dunkeld, Inver on the lowland side. Niel's heritage was highland, hence the spelling of his name, N-I-E-L, not E-I. He was probably a Gaelic speaker, though he spoke Scots or English too, and he regularly wore highland dress, another sign of his background. His father, John, probably worked on the farm at Claypots, although he was also a plaid weaver. Little is known about Niel's early days, but there's no doubt that he learned to play the violin with great skill. It is recorded that in 1744, when he was about 17, he won a competition for fiddle playing held in Perth. Later that year, he was in a band which played for Charles Edward Stuart, Bonnie Prince Charlie, who had come back from abroad to assert the Jacobite cause, in the end, as we all know, unsuccessfully. Niel married Margaret Wiseman in or around 1750, and their eldest child, William, was born in 1751. By now, he was settled in the cottage at Inver, which he would occupy for 57 years, and which still stands and is occupied still, though not by Gows. For this cottage, he paid 3 poultry and 3 days' darg, work for his landlord, plus £2 6 Scots per annum, and I think he was very happy there. Niel worked as a handloom linen weaver. That was his trade. It was a familiar trade in Scotland at that time. He cultivated his land, of which he had an acre, grew vegetables, milked his cows, and played his fiddle. His other children, after William, John, Andrew, Margaret, Grisel, Nathaniel, and Daniel, were born at 2 or 3 year intervals up to 1765. But then, just after that, disaster struck when his first wife, Margaret, died. Practical necessity made Niel, who was a hard-working man with 6 children, the youngest only a year old, seek another wife, and this he did most successfully when he married Margaret Urquhart in 1768. It was a very happy union, which lasted for 30 years. When eventually she died, he wrote for her a lament, the lament on the death of his second wife. Now, this is just about his most famous tune. It's certainly most heartfelt and very effective, and I'm going to play it in just a moment. Before I do, let me introduce you to the first of the 5 Scots fiddles which I'm going to use in this series of videos. It seems appropriate to use Scots violins for Niel Gow, and I'm happy to be able to do so. This one was made in 1880 by James Findlay of Padanaram, and it's a very good example of his fiddle making, and it's appropriate too because he was, like Niel, a handloom weaver. But eventually, as his life went on, he learned how to make violins, and he made over 500. He was very prolific. Well, you can hear it now in the lament for the death of his second wife by Niel Gow. Niel's skill as a fiddler came to the Duke of Athol's attention. Blair Castle, the home of the Dukes of Athol, is no very great distance, several miles, but reachable from Inver, and he was engaged as the Duke's fiddler on a wage of £5 per annum. His duties included fairly frequent visits to the castle for ceilidhs, social occasions and so on, and he soon won a reputation with the family and their many guests as a player well worth hearing. Now, it's worth mentioning that the guests were the highest people in Scottish society at the time, naturally enough, a very important duke. So many famous people, many influential people held Niel playing, and his fame spread considerably. People came specially to listen to him. That reputation grew and spread as the years went by until it was not just local but national. He earned money from teaching the fiddle as well, and his income, as well as what he earned from weaving, which was relatively well paid, made Niel, who was prudent with his cash, quite comfortably off. So at that happy point, I'm going to stop talking about Niel, and I'm going to play 3 tunes of his. This will be where the first video will end, more about his life in the next one and the one after and so on. 3 tunes by Niel. The texts are all taken, of these tunes, I've embellished them a little, are all taken from his son Nathaniel's books of Scottish dance music, which he published over several years towards the end of the 18th century into the 19th. Nathaniel wasn't entirely scrupulous about attributions, and it is known that sometimes he attributed a tune to somebody when it was actually written by somebody else. And he probably knew that. So I hope that these are all Niel Gow tunes, but I've tried very hard to make sure they are, and I think they are. Anyway, here we go, and this is the first one. This is John Leslie Melville. Now, John Leslie Melville was a very important man. He was actually General the Honourable John Leslie Melville, and he was the son of the 8th Earl of Melville, of Earl of Leven and Melville. And this is his slow strathspey. Unusual, I think. It's in D minor, but the form for a strathspey at that time is, as very often it was, a shortish first section repeated and a slightly longer second section not repeated. Here we go. Confess, I played a wrong note. I thought that third last note should have been a C natural, and it was actually a D. Sorry, Niel. Sorry, the Honourable John Leslie Melville. Right, I shall now find the page for the next tune, and I'll tell you about it. This next tune, which I'm going to play pretty straight from Nathaniel Gow's book, not much interfering from me, is Lady Anne Hope's favourite, and it's a well-known tune. She was the daughter of Sir John Hope of Hopeton, and she was generally very well connected. But though she was fortunate, I suppose, in having a fine, dignified tune written for her, a super tune, she was unfortunate in life because she died in 1780 at the age of only 17. I think it's rather odd that he was a little trill on that last note, but he did. The third and last tune in this first selection is Lady Muir Mackenzie's favourite. Now, the lady in question was Jane Murray, who married Sir Alexander Muir Mackenzie in 1789. And you find that with these famous Scottish fiddle composers, many tunes are written for and sometimes asked for by or commissioned some very important people, some very hip, well-connected people. So lots of them have named, well, on this page, Lady Mary Murray, Lady Mary Primrose's favourite, Lady Shaftesbury, Lady Viscountess Duncan, and so on. Well, the last one is Lament for Mrs. Oswald of Achencouve. So she maybe wasn't quite so posh. I don't know. Anyway, this is Lady Muir Mackenzie's favourite by Niel Gow. In videos 2, 3 and 4, more about Niel Gow and eventually about his children and more tunes.